Welcome to a deep dive that might just fundamentally change how you think about health.
Yeah,
Forget that old idea, that health is just about genes and germs.
right.
Today, we're digging into a really comprehensive source, health psychology, theory, research, and practice.
Mm-mm.
We want to explore how our minds, our bodies, and, well, the world around us all intertwine to create our health, our well-being.
Exactly.
Our mission here is simple. Give you a shortcut to being really well informed. Pull out the key nuggets, the surprising insights from this huge field.
Precisely.
Yeah.
This deep dive will show how health psychology moves way beyond just a purely biomedical view.
Okay.
It reveals these complex, often kind of hidden factors that shape our health and illness.
So you get a more whole picture.
You'll get a holistic understanding, yeah, from the microscopic stuff inside us to the big macro-social forces out there.
Okay, so to kick things off, what is health psychology exactly?
So it's this fascinating mix, an interdisciplinary field. It basically applies psychological knowledge, techniques to everything health-related. Health, illness, healthcare systems.
So it looks at individuals, like behavior, beliefs.
Definitely. It focuses a lot on individual behavior, beliefs, experiences. But crucially, it also looks critically at how those psychological issues fit into bigger social structures.
So things like economics, social justice, they play a part.
A huge part. They're not separate issues, they're embedded.
That leads us nicely into a really foundational idea, right? The biopsychosocial model, BPSM.
Absolutely. The BPSM, Engel proposed it back in the 70s and 80s.
And it was a challenge.
A direct challenge, yeah, to the dominance of the purely biomedical system, which often just looked at biology.
Right, the germs part of genes and germs.
Exactly. The core idea of BPSM is simple but profound. Biological, social, and psychological factors.
All of them.
All of them get equal priority when we talk about health, illness, and healthcare. They're all pieces of the puzzle.
Okay, let me break that down. So it's saying our social connections, our friends, family, community, and our inner world, our thoughts, feelings, they're just as vital to our health as our DNA or whether we catch a bug.
That's the essence of it. They're not secondary, they're integral.
Now, to help sort of visualize all these different layers, there's this framework, right? The health onion.
Yeah, the health onion. It's a general systems framework adapted from Dahlgren and Whitehead.
And what's cool about that?
What's fascinating is how it helps us visualize the multiple layers. Think of it like, well, an onion.
Okay.
You start with the individual at the core of their behaviors, maybe genetics. Then you move outwards.
To like family, community.
Exactly. Community networks, living conditions, then broader societal things like policy, culture, environment. Each layer influences the next.
That makes sense. Okay, now this next bit, I found this really interesting. How do you even measure some of this stuff?
The measurement challenge.
Yeah. It sounds fundamentally difficult. Psychological things aren't like, measuring distance. They're not obviously quantitative in the same way.
You've hit on a major point. There's even critique, like from Mitchell, questioning if psychologists' claims about measuring things like attitudes hold up philosophically.
So, like, take Diener's satisfaction with life scale. People rate 5 statements on a 1 to 7 scale. You add it up, max score 35, min 5. Is that really a measure in the strictest sense?
It's a valid question. Is summing those ratings truly measuring an underlying quantity like length or mass? It's debatable.
It does open up a whole philosophical can of worms. But, we still seem to find ways to make it useful.
We do. Pragmatically, health psychologists kind of get by. We can objectively compare interventions. Does Group A do better than Group B after this program?
Okay, so comparisons work.
And critically, we elicit patient experiences directly, in their own words. What's it like for you? That qualitative data is incredibly rich.
So even with the measurement puzzles, we find practical ways to understand and hopefully improve health.
That's the goal, yes.
Right, let's dive deeper into the body itself, this incredible interconnectedness. Like a symphony, almost.
A great analogy. We're talking about neuroimmunomodulation.
Okay, big word. Break it down.
It's the constant back and forth, the reciprocal interaction between the nervous system, the endocrine system that's hormones, and the immune system.
And how they all talk to the brain and influence behavior.
Exactly. You might hear terms like psychoimmunology or psychoneuroimmunology. Research from the early 90s really highlighted this.
So give us an example.
Okay, think about microglia cells in the brain. You could call them the brain's smart cells.
Why is that?
They're constantly surveying the brain environment, looking for trouble. But if they dysfunction,
Problems.
big problems, brain inflammation, neurodegeneration. This is linked to things like chronic pain, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, even MECFS.
Wow. And emotions fit in how?
Our emotions aren't just feelings in our head. They trigger real physical responses. Fear, excitement. Your amygdala might release adrenaline.
Fight or flight stuff.
Right. And that adrenaline burst can actually enhance how your hippocampus, the memory center, encodes that memory, makes it stick.
And brain chemicals, like glutamate.
Crucial. Glutamate is a major excitatory neurotransmitter, vital for synaptic plasticity, how connections between neurons change, which is key for learning and memory.
Okay, and the endocrine system, hormones.
That's the body's chemical messenger network, constantly releasing hormones. Estrogen, for example, helps maintain verbal memory in women.
And it regulates big things.
Vital functions, like our circadian rhythm, the body clock. If that gets disrupted, it can precipitate all sorts of disorders.
So if we connect this all up, what's the big picture?
It profoundly underscores that our mental states, our thoughts, feelings, stresses, they aren't isolated.
Right.
They're in this continuous two-way conversation with our biological systems.
Like inflammation, that's usually seen as purely physical.
It's a homeostatic defense, yes.
Yeah.
Our body trying to fix something. But chronic, prolonged inflammation, that has a poor prognosis.
And it connects to the mind.
It's bidirectionally connected with things like our circadian rhythms, even impacting diseases like cancer. And we see direct links.
Like from childhood.
Yes, really striking examples. Chronic distress in childhood, around ages 7 or 8, is associated with adult physical health problems, obesity, illnesses, inflammation later in life.
But there's a flip side.
Interestingly, yes. Moderate, sort of healthy fluctuations in the stress hormone cortisol in early childhood were actually linked to better executive function later on.
So it's not just stress is bad, it's complex.
Very complex. The body is constantly striving for balance.
Which brings us to another fascinating idea, subjective well-being, homeostasis.
Right. The idea that our well-being, our subjective feeling of how things are, normally tends towards the positive.
Is there evidence for that?
Quite a bit.
Oh.
Large Australian study, over 60,000 people, found only about 4% scored below the midpoint on a well-being index. Most people feel generally okay most of the time.
So homeostasis here means?
Psychological homeostasis is that innate drive we have to seek and preserve well-being, both physical and subjective, at the highest possible level.
Like survival instincts.
Exactly. It includes fundamental responses like fight or flight, or even the behavioral inhibition response. Think of a mouse freezing when it sees a hawk circling.
Trying to stay safe.
Right. And our memories play a huge role. They create feedback loops, guiding our behavior towards things that felt good or safe before and away from threats.
So the big takeaway here, it's like our minds have a built-in thermostat for feeling good, always trying to adjust.
That's a great way to put it. Constantly working to keep us feeling okay and safe.
But how much of that is hardwired, our nature, and how much is shaped by life, our nurture? This is where epigenetics comes in, right?
Exactly. It bridges that gap. First, just the scale. The human genome has 3.2 billion base pairs of DNA in every cell. It's staggering.
And twin studies, they help untangle genes and environment.
They do. A huge meta-analysis, Polderman and colleagues looked at almost all twin studies ever done.
And the finding?
Across all human traits studied, heritability averaged out at 49%.
Wow, almost exactly half genes, half environment.
Pretty much an equal contribution, yeah. Which sets the stage for epigenetics.
So what is epigenetics?
Think of them as bridging processes. They change the final outcome of a gene or a chromosome without actually altering the underlying DNA sequence itself.
So it's not rewriting the genetic code.
No. It's more like adding notes in the margin, telling the gene whether to be loud or quiet, turning genes on or off, or dialing them up or down.
And this is where it gets really profound, right? Experiences changing gene expression.
It is. We see really striking examples of intergenerational transmission. Things experienced by one generation seem to leave a mark on the next.
Like trauma.
Yes. Studies have looked at the children of women pregnant during severe famines, like the Dutch hunger winter, or the adult offspring of Holocaust survivors. Even women who were pregnant and evacuated from the World Trade Center on 9/11.
And they found effects on the children?
Evidence of biological changes, yeah. Markers related to stress response, for instance.
Can you give a specific example?
Sure. Project Ice Storm studied mothers who endured a major natural disaster in Canada.
Okay.
The amount of objective hardship the mother experienced was correlated with changes in DNA methylation. That's an epigenetic mark in their children's T cells, immune cells, 13 years later.
Affecting their immune function.
Potentially, yes. which really raises an important question.
Which is?
If our experiences, like stress, can leave these kinds of marks on our children's biology, what responsibility does that give us to maybe optimize our own health, especially before and during pregnancy?
That's heavy. And looking ahead.
Well, there's intriguing, maybe slightly speculative talk of epigenetic embryonic forecasting within decades.
Predicting future health risks based on these epigenetic marks at birth.
Potentially. Predicting susceptibility to non-genetic metabolic disorders like obesity or type 2 diabetes. Still early days, but fascinating.
Absolutely. Okay, let's shift focus now. Move outwards from the individual biology to the social fabric of health.
Right, because where you stand in society profoundly matters.
Health inequalities. You mentioned these are universal, like a constant.
Yes, often called health gradients. It's a remarkably consistent finding across time and place.
Meaning?
Simply put, people of lower socioeconomic status, less income, education, occupational status, consistently have more illness and die younger than those higher up the ladder.
This isn't new, is it?
Not at all. Go back to the 19th century, Edwin Chadwick's studies in Victorian England. He clearly identified poverty, poor housing, bad water, the environment as key determinants.
Is there a modern example that makes it really vivid?
There's a memorable one from London, the Jubilee line on the Underground.
Okay.
If you travel east from Westminster, which is affluent, towards Canning Town in the East End, life expectancy drops by about 1 year for every single stop you pass.
Wow, 1 year per stop. That's stark.
It really illustrates the gradient visually.
So let's unpack that. Your postcode, your income, maybe even your ethnic background. They aren't just labels. They're powerful predictors of how long and how well you'll live.
That's exactly it. And this gradient isn't just in rich countries. Even within very poor nations, say in sub-Saharan Africa, you see significant gradients in things like under 5 mortality rates between the richest and poorest segments of society.
And race and culture, how do they fit in?
Often, health differences related to race or ethnicity are mediated by socioeconomic status. Lower SES contributes heavily. But also, we absolutely cannot ignore the direct impact of racism.
Yeah. The experience of discrimination, institutional barriers. Numerous studies show racism contributes directly to poorer mental and physical health among minority groups.
It's a stressor with real biological consequences.
Absolutely. And the direct health toll of poverty itself. What are the most common outcomes?
Typically, infectious diseases, think TB, respiratory infections often linked to poor sanitation and overcrowding. Malnutrition is huge. And reproductive hazards for women.
Can you give an example, like with a specific disease?
HIV is a powerful example. There was the 3x5 initiative by the WHO aiming to get antiretroviral therapy to 3 million people in developing countries by 2005.
Did it work?
It only met about half its target. A major reason was the sheer cost of the medicines, tied up in pharmaceutical patents. Poverty created a massive barrier to accessing life-saving treatment.
But are there positive examples where tackling poverty helped health?
Yes, definitely. Brazil's Fome Zero, or Zero Hunger program, is a good example.
What did they see?
Local health clinics reported a noticeable reduction in patient visits for poverty-related health problems after the program was implemented. It showed that systemic social change can directly improve health outcomes.
Okay. Another powerful social factor is stigma.
Right? Hugely powerful. Stigma is basically unfavorable reactions people have towards attributes that are seen as denigrated or shameful. And it's universal.
And people can face multiple stigmas.
Yes, what's called multiply stigmatized. For instance, HIV infection became heavily linked to specific groups, like gay men or injection drug users, which intensified pre-existing stigmas against those groups.
There's even a term for its impact.
Stigma power. Link and Phelan coined it. They argue it's a hidden mechanism of exploitation and exclusion. It keeps people down, limits opportunities, affects access to resources, including healthcare.
How can we counter stigma?
Community-based approaches show promise. Things like community arts projects, for example.
How do they help?
They can empower individuals, improve self-worth, give people a voice, and directly challenge and reduce the stigma associated with, say, mental health issues or other conditions.
Right. Beyond stigma, our cultural backgrounds also shape how we think about health, right?
Absolutely. Our health beliefs are deeply embedded in culture. Think about Western traditions, like classical Galenic medicine with its 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile.
Sounds ancient.
It is. But compare that to, say, Ayurvedic medicine from India, with its own complex system. And importantly, people often don't stick rigidly to one system. They draw on a mix of ideas.
What about modern Western beliefs? Are they just scientific?
Not entirely. A seminal study by Herzlich back in the 70s looked at Western lay health beliefs.
What did she find?
People often conceived of health as a state of individual harmony, like being in balance. Illness was seen as a major transformation of one's life. And interestingly, inactivity was often seen as the real marker of being truly ill.
So it's not just about symptoms.
No. And lay perceptions usually go beyond just describing health or illness.
Yeah.
They include explanations, often rooted in social experience, not just biology.
And health is seen more as a choice now.
Increasingly, yes. Viewed as a lifestyle choice, something you achieve through diet, exercise, and so on, which can be empowering, but also potentially blaming if someone gets sick.
What about things like herbal medicines? How does culture play in there?
Well, the scientific evidence for many herbal medicines is mixed. Some systematic reviews show support for specific conditions like tortoise disorders or gout. But for many others, the evidence is inconclusive, often due to methodological issues in the studies.
Yet people use them a lot.
Patient acceptance is often very high. Why? Because they often align better with personal values or cultural beliefs. They can provide feelings of control, empowerment, doing something active for your health.
So what's fascinating here is just how deeply our cultural lenses shape everything, our practices, how we perceive illness, how we make sense of it all.
It's fundamental. You can't understand health without understanding culture.
Okay, let's move on now to navigating health behaviors. And crucially, why changing them is often so incredibly hard.
It's a critical area because, let's face it, most of the leading causes of illness and death globally are behavioral. Meaning many deaths are preventable. Things we do or don't do have a massive impact.
Are there specific numbers on that?
Yes. The source highlights the 5 leading global risk factors for disease burden. You've got childhood and maternal underweight,
Okay.
unprotected sex, high blood pressure, tobacco use, and alcohol use. Collectively, just those 5 account for nearly 30% of the global burden of disease.
Almost a third, from basically behavioral or modifiable factors.
Exactly. And look at HIV. Between 1990 and 2010, the disability-adjusted life years, basically years lost to illness or early death, for HIV patients increased by a staggering 354%. Much of that driven by behavior.
Wow. Here's where it gets really interesting then. These stats show powerfully that so much of our collective health destiny is quite literally in our collective hands.
It really underscores the potential for prevention.
But it's not as simple as just telling people what to do, right? There's this critique of individualism.
Yes, there's a prevalent ideology that tends to blame individuals for their health conditions. The smoker who gets lung cancer, the overweight person with diabetes. It's often framed as their fault.
And traditional health education, the just say no approach.
It's often criticized because it overlooks the complex reality of human choice. We're not purely rational beings. Our choices are massively influenced by emotions, by social pressures, by economic constraints.
You can't just say no if healthy food is unaffordable or unavailable where you live.
Precisely. There's even the concept of a toxic environment, proposed by Brownell and Fairburn, an environment that actually propels people toward unhealthy behaviors, making them the easy, default choice and directly causing illness.
And powerful industries play a role.
Definitely. Moody and colleagues pointed out how the alcohol and ultra-processed food industries use strategies very similar to those the tobacco industry used for decades.
To do what?
To undermine effective public health policies. They argue these industries should have absolutely no role in forming policies around non-communicable diseases like heart disease, diabetes, cancer.
Because their interests conflict with public health.
Fundamentally. This context is vital when we talk about something like obesity.
Which is a huge issue, a complex pandemic.
Huge. Predictions suggest that by 2050, the majority of adults, and maybe 25% of children, will be obese.
And it's not just about gluttony.
No. It's crucial to understand that obesity often arises from this very subtle, almost imperceptible imbalance in the body's homeostatic mechanisms, regulating energy intake and expenditure. It's not usually a simple case of lack of willpower.
And how we measure it. BMI isn't perfect.
Far from it. Body mass index is a crude measure. It doesn't distinguish between muscle mass and fat mass. More accurate methods like DXA scans or MRI.
They show what?
They can reveal that up to 20% of people with a technically normal BMI actually have clinically significant levels of visceral fat, the dangerous fat around the organs. BMI can be misleading.
So connecting this to the bigger picture, blaming individuals for obesity really oversimplifies a massive systemic issue.
Absolutely. It's heavily influenced by the food industry, our modern environment. this obesogenic environment we live in.
What makes it obesogenic?
Think about it. Processed foods, engineered for hyperpalatability, loaded with sugar, salt, unhealthy fats are everywhere. They're often cheap, convenient, heavily marketed.
And the whole calories a calorie idea.
That's largely false from a metabolic perspective. Our bodies use different amounts of energy to process protein, carbs, and fat. This is the thermic effect of food.
How does it differ?
You burn fewer calories processing fat compared to protein, for example. So the type of calorie matters for energy balance, not just the number. Feynman and Fina wrote about this.
There's also the food reward theory?
Yes, this suggests there might be impairments in the brain's dopamine pathways, the reward system in some obese individuals, affecting motivation for food, cravings, pleasure derived from eating.
And links back to childhood.
Strong links. We mentioned chronic childhood distress being linked to adult obesity. Also, insecure parental attachment styles have been shown to predict eating pathology and weight gain later on.
That's fascinating. What about trying to lose weight? Does how people feel about their weight matter?
It's complex. Perceiving yourself as overweight and being dissatisfied with your weight are associated with trying to lose weight. Makes sense. But paradoxically, those feelings can sometimes be negatively associated with actually engaging in healthy behaviors, like regular exercise or healthy eating.
So feeling bad about your weight might actually hinder healthy actions.
In some cases, yes. It suggests that maybe interventions, especially for adolescents, should try to encourage body satisfaction and self-acceptance alongside promoting healthy habits, rather than just focusing on dissatisfaction.
That's counterintuitive, and even official dietary guidelines face criticism.
They do. Some argue that guidelines, like the U.S. DGA for 2015-2020, might be based on an outdated understanding of the science.
How so?
By potentially ignoring more recent findings on things like saturated fats, the benefits of low-carbohydrate diets for certain conditions, the science is always evolving.
What about surgery? Bariatric surgery?
It can be very effective for significant weight loss, yes, but it's not a magic bullet psychologically. Some studies show patients continue to struggle with issues like depression or body image concerns even after successful surgery.
Right. Okay, let's switch to alcohol, the elusive safe limit.
Yes. Public perception around alcohol has been heavily shaped by history temperance movements. Alcoholics Anonymous.
What does the science say about moderate drinking?
Generally, for healthy individuals, moderate consumption seems to pose no significant physical health risk. But the claim that it's actively beneficial is debated.
Why?
Partly because of the sick quitters effect, identified by Shaper and colleagues.
Explain that again.
Non-drinkers, as a group, sometimes show poorer health outcomes. But this might be because many people stop drinking because they develop health problems. So abstinence isn't causing the poor health, the pre-existing illness is. It confuses correlation and causation.
Got it. So you can't easily say moderate drinking causes better health.
Exactly. And there's that health education adage that really captures the complexity of problem drinking.
Which is?
If you drink because you have a problem, then you will end up with two problems. It highlights how drinking can become intertwined with and worsen existing issues.
Are there genetic factors?
Evidence from twin and adoption studies does suggest genetic influences on drinking patterns and risk for alcohol dependence. Nature and nurture again.
So the main takeaway here, the whole chicken and egg thing with alcohol and health is way more complex than headlines suggest.
Definitely. And at a population level, there's a clear link. The more alcohol a society consumes overall, the greater the extent of alcohol-related problems.
Like the WHO finding.
Right, that the 10% heaviest drinkers consume about half of all the alcohol drunk worldwide. Problems are concentrated.
What about treatments?
There are various approaches. CBT, motivational interviewing, mindfulness-based relapse prevention. Brief interventions are often highlighted.
Are they effective?
They are cost-effective, yes, easy to implement. But their average impact on actual alcohol consumption tends to be fairly modest. Changing drinking habits is tough.
Okay. Now, tobacco, the persistent threat.
And that WHO quote really hits hard. Tobacco's the only legal drug that kills many of its users when used exactly as intended by manufacturers.
Chilling. We know the industry targeted young people. Do policies help?
Absolutely. Strong advertising bans have been shown to significantly reduce consumption. Policy matters.
Why is stopping smoking so hard?
Tiffany's work highlights craving, that intense urge, and also automatized action schemata.
Meaning?
Smoking becomes this deeply ingrained, almost automatic habit. The rituals, the triggers. It's not just about nicotine addiction. It's behavioral.
Can things like mindfulness help?
Yes, mindfulness can help people become more aware of those triggers and automatic responses, creating space to choose a different action rather than lighting up reflexively.
What's surprising about quitting?
This is really striking. Over 90% of smokers who successfully quit long-term do so unassisted.
Meaning cold turkey, without patches or gum.
Essentially, yes. Going it alone. The source argues public health authorities should maybe highlight this success route more, alongside promoting NRT or e-cigarettes.
Speaking of e-cigarettes, what's the verdict?
The jury is still very much out. We don't know the long-term health effects. There's concern about dual use, people using both e-cigs and regular cigarettes. And the big question, are they a gateway to smoking for young people or a pathway out for existing smokers? The evidence is still unfolding and debated.
Right. Final behavior, physical activity, more than just exercise.
Absolutely. And levels vary a lot internationally. Adults in the UK, for instance, tend to be less active than those in the Netherlands.
And inactivity links to obesity.
It's a direct contributor to the obesity pandemic, yes. Less energy out.
What influences activity levels beyond individual choice?
The built environment is huge. Neighborhood features matter dramatically.
Like what?
How pleasant is it to walk around? Are there sidewalks? Does it feel safe? Access to parks? These things strongly predict physical activity levels.
There's also this concept, affluenza.
Yeah, Oliver James coined that. He suggests it's a symptom of increasing social inequality in affluent societies.
How does it relate to activity?
It reflects this kind of passive consumerist lifestyle where health itself can almost feel like something you buy rather than something you actively do. Less intrinsic motivation for activity.
Are there models for understanding behavior change here?
The trans-theoretical model, Prochaska and DiClementi's stages of change, is often applied. Pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance. Recognizing people are at different levels of readiness.
But these cognitive models face critiques.
Yes, they're often criticized for being too individualistic and rationalistic, focusing too much on conscious thought processes.
And they don't always predict behavior well.
There's the famous intention-behavior gap. Many people intend to be more active but don't follow through. One stat suggests only about 42% of intenders successfully engage in physical activity.
And barriers differ.
Yes, there's a self-efficacy gap. People in more deprived groups often report lower confidence in their ability to be active, likely reflecting real systemic barriers, lack of time, safe spaces, cost.
What about exercise and body image?
Generally, it's a positive link. Exercise often improves body image. But for some women, particularly those who exercise very intensely, perhaps with a focus on appearance, it can paradoxically lead to higher body dissatisfaction.
Interesting. And for disabled people.
Exercise can be really beneficial for mood, reducing rumination, shifting from what the source calls passive distress towards active mood management.
Okay, so summing up this section, promoting physical activity isn't just about nagging people.
Not at all. It's about shaping environments, making healthy choices, the easy choices. It's about addressing cultural beliefs, tackling inequalities, making activity accessible and desirable for everyone.
Right. Now let's transition to the experience of living with illness and navigating the healthcare system itself.
A huge part of health psychology. How do people make sense of being ill?
They create stories, narratives.
Exactly. Murray highlighted this. People create narratives about their illness experience. Helps them find meaning, exert some control, make sense of what's happening.
There's also biographical disruption.
Yes, Beery's concept. A serious illness can shatter your sense of self, your assumptions about your life, your future. It disrupts your life story.
Can you give an example of how this plays out with healthcare?
A study by McGowan and colleagues looked at women with chronic pelvic pain.
What did they find?
These women described pathways to disengagement. They felt the healthcare system denied the reality of their pain, didn't take them seriously, so they gradually withdrew.
That's incredibly sad. Can expressing these experiences help?
Potentially. Pennebaker's work on therapeutic writing suggests that writing about stressful or traumatic experiences, including illness, can lead to health benefits, processing it through language.
And how does society shape these illness stories?
Social representations theory puts the social context front and center. How we collectively understand and talk about illnesses shapes individual experiences.
Like with AIDS.
A powerful example. The gay movement successfully challenged and subverted the dominant stigma around AIDS, reframing it from a gay plague to a disease affecting everyone, including heterosexuals. That changed the social representation, the collective story.
Okay, let's unpack this. So The way we talk about illness, the way we understand it, isn't just private. It's shaped by these big collective stories and cultural
Oh,
force.
absolutely. Our individual sense-making happens within that broader social context.
Now, a related challenge: adherence to treatment, following medical advice.
And this is a shocker for many. Non-adherence would seem to be the norm.
Really? What are the numbers?
Estimates suggest 50–75% of patients don't fully adhere to medical advice. It's incredibly common.
And the costs.
Staggering. One estimate suggests up to $100 billion in preventable U.S. hospital admissions annually just due to poor medication adherence. Osterberg and Plash reported that.
What helps people adhere?
The physician-patient relationship is absolutely central. Patients strongly prefer a patient-centered, collaborative, affiliative style.
Not the authoritarian doctor knows best approach.
No. Feeling heard, respected, involved in decisions that improves adherence. Also, practical social support from family partners. That's highly correlated with adherence, too. Someone reminding you, helping you.
But there's a tension sometimes between doctors and patients.
There can be. Patients often want more information than they feel they get. And sometimes physicians might seem reluctant to disclose everything, or their communication style might, unfortunately, come across as challenging the patient's intelligence or understanding.
That definitely wouldn't help adherence.
Not at all.
Okay, another difficult topic: medical error.
A deeply concerning issue. Ivan Illich coined the term iatrogenesis decades ago, health problems caused by medicine itself.
And it's common.
Alarmingly so. A landmark U.S. Institute of Medicine report estimated that somewhere between 44,000 and 98,000 Americans die each year from preventable medical errors.
How does that compare?
That's potentially more deaths than from car accidents, breast cancer, or AIDS at the time of the report.
What causes these errors?
Common factors include shortages of key staff like nurses, leading to overwork, stress, fatigue among providers, and crucially, poor communication within the healthcare team.
How should we think about preventing errors? Blame individuals?
That's the person approach, blaming individuals for being forgetful, careless, inattentive, but it's often ineffective and unfair.
What's the alternative?
The systems approach. This focuses on the conditions in which people work. Error-provoking conditions like understaffing, inadequate training, production pressure, weak procedures or defenses within the system. Fixing the system, not just blaming the person.
But errors often go unreported.
Yes, there's a huge problem of medical silence. Health professionals are often discouraged, implicitly or explicitly, from reporting errors or near misses.
How common is that?
One Australian study suggested over 60% of errors weren't reported. Fear of blame, litigation, damage to reputation.
This raises a really important question then. If errors are so common and so underreported, how does that impact patient trust and the overall quality of care we all receive?
It's a fundamental challenge to trust and safety. Absolutely. Transparency and a systems focus are crucial.
Okay. Let's talk about pain. How is it understood in health psychology?
Critically, pain is defined as subjective. It's an emotional experience, multidimensional, not just a simple physical sensation.
And how people react to pain matters.
Massively. There's a concept called pain catastrophizing.
What's that?
It's an exaggerated negative mental set brought to bear during actual or anticipated pain experiences, thinking the worst, feeling helpless, ruminating on it.
And its impact.
LeMay and colleagues found it's the single biggest factor linked to lower quality of life in chronic pain patients, even stronger than the reported intensity of the pain itself. How you think about the pain matters hugely.
What helps manage pain psychologically?
Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, has a strong evidence base. Acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, and mindfulness-based approaches are also increasingly used and found effective, helping people relate differently to their pain.
Is pain treated well generally?
Unfortunately, pain is often undertreated. Reasons include inadequate pain services, lack of proper assessment by clinicians, and persistent fears, both from patients and doctors, about opioid addiction.
Okay. Let's move to living with specific conditions. Cancer.
Cancer isn't one disease, of course. It's a collection of maybe 100, 200 different diseases, but it has profound impacts: physical, psychosocial, existential.
And the treatments themselves are tough.
Aggressive treatments like chemo and radiotherapy often lead to a significant decline in psychosocial function, quality of life during and after treatment.
Are there phases of survivorship?
Yes, often described in 3 phases. Re-entry, the immediate period after active treatment ends. early survivorship and long-term survivorship.
Which phase is hardest?
That re-entry transition from the structured environment of hospital treatment back to recuperating at home can be particularly difficult and disorienting for many people. Support is crucial then.
Do interventions always help?
Not always universally. The New Care study, for example, looked at group interventions for cancer patients.
What did it find?
It found that some groups, particularly men with colon cancer, actually struggled in the interventions, often due to ongoing physical problems making participation hard, and sometimes issues with mixed-sex group dynamics. It highlights the need for really tailored support.
What about cancer screening? There's talk of overdiagnosis.
Yes, that's the idea that screening detects some cancers. Estimates range from 19–35%, in some cases that would never actually have caused symptoms or problems during a person's lifetime if left untreated.
Does that put people off screening?
Interestingly, most women, for example with breast cancer screening, are still willing to participate, provided they receive clear, transparent information about both the potential benefits and the risks, including overdiagnosis. Informed choice is key.
Okay. Coronary heart disease, CHD, what's the psychological angle?
Physically, it's about narrowed arteries, risk of heart attack, angina. But psychologically, there's a very strong link with depression.
How strong?
Pre-surgical depression is a significant predictor of poor cardiac outcomes after procedures like bypass surgery. Mental health deeply impacts heart health.
And social factors.
What's fascinating here is how powerfully things like social support predict heart health, moving beyond just traditional risk factors like cholesterol or blood pressure.
Lack of support is bad.
Consistently.
Hmm.
Population studies show a lack of social support predicts mortality. One classic study by Gomer found that low attachment and low social integration were two of the leading risk factors for developing CHD in middle-aged men, right up there with smoking.
That's incredible. What about after a heart event? Rehabilitation.
Exercise-based cardiac rehabilitation, CR, has very strong evidence. A major meta-analysis by Anderson and colleagues looking at 63 studies
Found what?
found CR significantly reduces cardiovascular mortality, reduces hospital readmissions, and improves quality of life. It works.
Any surprising predictors of heart health?
This one is wild. A study by Eichstadt and colleagues looked at language used on Twitter at a community level.
Twitter language predicting heart disease.
Yes. They found that communities where language reflecting negative emotions, especially anger and disengagement, was more common, had significantly higher heart disease mortality rates.
And positive language.
Language reflecting positive emotion and engagement was protective, associated with lower heart disease mortality.
So what does this all mean? Even our collective digital footprint might be giving us clues about our heart health.
It's a provocative finding, suggesting community-level psychological states have tangible health impact.
Wow. Okay. HIV/AIDS. Still a major issue.
Absolutely. Still a global pandemic, the fourth largest killer worldwide. Around 2 million new cases a year, 1 million deaths. We can't forget that.
What increases risk, psychologically or socially?
Among men who have sex with men, MSM, psychosocial health problems often cluster together and additively increase risk. Things like polydrug use, depression, experiences of partner violence, history of childhood sexual abuse. It's complex vulnerability.
And stigma is still a huge issue.
Massive. We mentioned the 3 dimensions. Internalized stigma, believing negative stereotypes about yourself. Anticipated stigma, expecting rejection. And enacted stigma, actual experiences of discrimination.
Which has the worst impact.
Enacted stigma seems most strongly linked to poorer mental health outcomes, and also negatively impacts healthcare utilization, people avoiding clinics due to fear of judgment.
Can you give an example of high-risk environments?
The source mentions beer girls, in Cambodia women employed to promote beer in bars. Studies found very high rates of alcohol consumption, low condom use, and consequently around 20% were seropositive for HIV/AIDS. Economic vulnerability driving health risks.
And adherence to treatment. We mentioned cost earlier.
Yes, but beyond cost, Kilge and colleagues highlighted how a lack of a viable future can make it incredibly difficult for patients to adhere to demanding antiretroviral ARV regimens. If you feel hopeless about your future due to poverty, stigma, lack of opportunity, mustering the motivation for a complex daily medication routine that offers long-term benefit becomes immensely challenging. Hope matters for adherence.
Powerful point. Briefly, other chronic illnesses, like arthritis, diabetes.
Arthritis is the most common cause of disability globally. Diabetes is a leading cause of kidney failure, lower limb amputations, blindness, huge burdens.
What's a key insight about living with diabetes?
A qualitative study by Ogord found that for many patients, managing diabetes felt like a marginal problem in their lives.
Marginal how?
It was often overshadowed by more immediate, burdening circumstances and troubles in life. Poverty, family problems, job insecurity. Diabetes management had to fit around those bigger struggles.
That really puts it in perspective. What about ME/CFS, myalgic encephalomyelitis, or chronic fatigue syndrome?
Important clarifications here. Actual measurable fatigue isn't a strict requirement for diagnosis under some criteria, and patients very often report feeling that medical care is insufficient or dismissive.
There's controversy around psychological theories.
Yes, particularly around cognitive behavioral models that assert that patients' own cognitions, like fear of activity, and behaviors, like boom and bust cycles, perpetuate their fatigue.
Why the controversy?
Because these models often don't seem to accurately fit the experiences of many people with ME/CFS, especially compared to how they might apply to chronic fatigue symptoms seen in primary psychiatric conditions. It's a contested area.
Okay, let's wrap up this deep dive by looking at the science itself. How health psychology actually knows what it claims to know.
Right. Understanding the methods and the evidence base is crucial. A key concept is the hierarchy of evidence.
Like a pyramid.
Exactly. It helps us weigh different types of research. At the base, you might have qualitative studies, case reports great for generating ideas, understanding experiences in depth.
Then moving up.
Observational studies like surveys, cohort studies, then controlled experiments, ideally randomized controlled trials, RCTs. And at the very top, systematic reviews and meta-analyses that synthesize findings from multiple studies.
So different methods have different strengths.
Precisely. Quantitative methods, like experiments and surveys, are good for testing hypotheses, looking for cause and effect on larger scales. Qualitative methods, like interviews or focus groups, give you rich, deep understanding of context and meaning.
What about action research?
That's more collaborative, working with communities or groups to create change. It's often dynamic, responsive, but can be messy and harder to evaluate with rigid RCT methods.
This hierarchy raises an important question then. Why should we trust certain research findings more than others? What makes for really robust evidence in this field?
It comes down to methodology, minimizing bias, replication, and the convergence of evidence from different types of studies.
But there are challenges, like the replication crisis.
Yes, that shook psychology. The Open Science Collaboration Project attempted to replicate 100 published psychology studies.
And the result?
Fewer than half could be successfully replicated, which raised serious questions about the reliability of some published findings. Interestingly, studies with lower, more statistically significant p-values were actually more likely to replicate.
Beyond replication, are there ethical concerns, like funding bias?
Absolutely. The source gives the example of Hans Eysenck, the prominent psychologist.
What about him?
He received substantial funding from the tobacco industry over many years, and he made these, frankly, staggering claims suggesting personality factors were more strongly related to cancer death than smoking was.
Wow. Was that true?
Here's where it gets really interesting. The idea that mind power alone can beat cancer, or is the primary cause, is not only unsubstantiated, but potentially deeply harmful. It can burden patients unfairly.
What does better evidence show?
A large meta-analysis by Jokela and colleagues over 42,000 participants looked at the big 5 personality traits in cancer.
The finding?
No association between personality traits and cancer incidence or mortality. Eysenck's claims didn't hold up to larger scrutiny.
Does this critique extend to positive psychology?
Some critiques do. Coyne and Tenen argued that positive psychology needs to be firmly based on scientific evidence rather than wishful thinking.
Especially regarding claims about
unsubstantiated claims about things like benefit finding or post-traumatic growth directly strengthening the immune system to fight disease. The evidence for direct physiological effects like that is often weak or lacking.
what is supported regarding psychological factors in major diseases?
Well, depression shows little consistent support for a link to cancer onset. However, there is a strong relationship between depression and worse outcomes, including mortality from cardiovascular disease.
Any personality trait linked to better health?
Yes, conscientiousness, being organized, diligent, self-discipline does show a modest but significant correlation with longevity.
Why? Direct mind-body effect.
Most likely mediated by behavior. Conscientious people are simply more likely to engage in healthier behaviors, less smoking, better diet, more checkups, and avoid risky ones.
Right. Finally, let's touch on end-of-life care.
A profoundly important area. We talk about concepts like a good death, or quality of death and dying.
What does high-quality end-of-life care look like?
Ideally, it should reflect the patient's values and preferences, promote compassionate communication between patients, families, and clinicians, provide family-oriented care, and reduce burdensome, unnecessary, aggressive interventions when cure is no longer the goal.
Have attempts to improve, it worked.
It's challenging. The large-scale support study aimed to improve end-of-life care through better communication and planning. Despite its efforts, it found no significant improvement in key patient outcomes, like pain control or being conscious near death. It showed how difficult systemic change can be.
What about the task of death notification, telling families?
It's incredibly demanding for physicians. Ombres and colleagues found 80% of junior doctors felt inadequately trained for it.
And the impact.
Poorly handled notification can contribute to complicated grief for families and causes significant stress and burnout for the physicians themselves. Training is vital.
There's also the right to die movement.
Yes, and the complex ethics around physician-assisted care or suicide, often centering on the concept of unbearable suffering as a criterion.
What's the argument for it?
Proponents argue that sometimes curative medicine itself becomes complicit in the production of suffering by prolonging dying. They question if palliative care, while crucial, can truly alleviate all forms of suffering in all cases.
And the criticisms.
Critics raise concerns about potential coercion, impacts on vulnerable groups due to social inequality, the difficulty of assessing suffering objectively, and ensuring proper legal processes and safeguards. It's deeply contested.
And organ donation.
Discussing wishes about organ donation in advance with families is incredibly important, so those wishes are known and can be respected if the situation arises.
Wow. What a journey we've been on.
It really covers so much ground.
From the, intricate dance of our biology, the nervous system, immune system, all the way out to the profound impact of social inequality. And then wrestling with behavior change, the ethics in healthcare, the reality of living with illness.
Yeah.
It really shows health is truly holistic.
Indeed. The insights from health psychology really empower you, the listener, to look at health differently, not just as an individual state you achieve or fail at,
Right.
but as this dynamic interplay of biological, psychological, and social factors. It really demands critical thinking and a multifaceted approach.
So what does this all mean for you listening? What's the final provocative thought? Perhaps the biggest takeaway is this. Understanding health psychology doesn't just challenge us to advocate for our own individual well-being.
Although that's important.
Of course. But it also challenges us, maybe even obligates us, to question and work to improve the broader social and environmental systems that fundamentally shape the health of us all.